Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now? Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you all hear me? Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me now? All right. Now let's see. Should I try and get a couple more people on, or should we just start? Just a reminder, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, according to Biz, I should be able to. My new monitor, the color is a bit washed out, but it should be all right. It should be all right at least for now. Also, for now, you guys have to see my horrible little goblin hands. We'll try and get a couple more people. I currently have wondering how many people are. Sorry, I'm quiet. I'm just trying to get used to all this and asking for some advice. A couple servers I'm on. Okay, actually, next question: is my audio okay? Like, is I sound distant? Am I far away? Or like, should I put myself? Should I put my face close to the microphone? How about now? All right. Okay. Okay. Let's see. All right. Fuck it. Might as well start. Bestiarium cryptozoologica. Mystery animals and unknown species in classic science fiction and fantasy. Basically a collection of public domain stories about, well, exactly what it says in the 10. We got a few stuff things lined up. And from a pretty wide range of people. We got stuff from H.G. Wells. We got Conan Doyle. Let's see. We got Conan Doyle. Fuck, I don't remember the names of the others. But suffice to say, I've got a pretty wide range of authors from a pretty wide range of creatures. Any specifically in this index you guys want to check out, or yeah? Anyone have anything? All right. Yeah, that's one vote for starting at the beginning. Uh-huh. The Gene by Charles L. Hildreth. The All-Merciful has turned their feet backwards as a warning to man. I need to tilt this up a little bit more. This. Okay, is the text legible? Like, can you guys read this text? Uh, okay, yeah. No, fuck it. Fuck it, we're doing it live. We're doing it live! The country between Bandalore and Camus is, without exception, the most utterly forlorn, wretched, and desolate region in all western India. The road, if a mere jungle track, more frequently trodden by wild animals than man may be so styled, wanders hither and thither in an aimless fashion, as if it were out on a stroll, rather than on government business. Now exploring a swamp where the thick black mud welters up to your horse's knees with a foul, fever-suggesting smell. Again toiling straight up a steep hill, evidently for the purpose of doing reverence to a heap of stones marking the tomb of some local saint. Or leading you miles out of your way to an old well, whose filthy contents would have sickened Dives himself. At long intervals you come upon a miserable village squatted in the jungle, your nose having warned you of its proximity some time before it manifests itself to your vision. At still wider intervals you find the station bungalows, for the most part tumble-down affairs with lounging doors, windows curtained with half a generation of cobwebs and dust, roofs whose sins of admission are most flagrant during the wet season, and floors made of brick when they are not merely trodden earth, forming preserves well stocked with every species of small deer, for whose sustenance bountiful nature has provided the cuticle of man. I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. I think the general idea it's not a good. This isn't a good place. After a long day's ride over such a road as I have described, even a station bungalow presents a certain charm. The musty grass mattress is a shade better than bare ground, albeit one's bedfellows make a night of it at a revel where one is not a feaster but is feasted upon. The burned chops of a centenarian goat serve at least to fill the void after an early breakfast of chapatis and dal-leaden cakes and muddy beans. Such, at all events, that damp, chill September night, was the opinion of Julian and myself, two young engineers in government employ, forerunners of the Hyderabad and Walpur Railway. Our party consisted of 3 persons besides ourselves, 2 native servants and a guy from Kotri. The Kansaman, or keeper of the bungalow, welcomed us with a smile as broad as the dogs in hot weather, and with assurance of the instant preparation of a banquet fit for Lucullus, which at the end of the hour materialized in the shape of a detestable curry. If this scenario was any more British, it would have started invading the world for spices. After we had devoured what was placed before us with the appetite of youth and the philosophy of seasoned travelers, Julian and I dragged a couple stools out upon the veranda, and, resting our backs against the wall, found solace for the ills of life in tobacco. Too weary to talk, we smoked in silence. I had closed my eyes, and with the soft rustle of the palms, the fitful, far-off moaning of a jackal becoming entangled with the fringes of an incipient dream. I was fast nodding into complete slumber, when a sudden movement on the part of my companion aroused me. "What is that?" he ejaculated. "Didn't you hear it?" "No," said I heard nothing. What was it like?" "It was— Hark! There it is again!" Such a sound I had never heard before. It was certainly not human, and in all my experience of the animal life of India, my ears had never been saluted with the like. I cannot describe it. I cannot compare it with any other thing. If I say it was shrill and far-reaching, yet inexpressibly sweet and mournful, echoing through the dusky aisles of the forest, as if from some hidden glade miles away, yet clear and distinct as the notes of a flute close at hand, a sound that stirred the heart and sent cold thrills creeping over the skin, as of some sudden exquisite change in music, awakening vague and melancholy longings for something lost or something unattainable. Saying all this, I still utterly failed to convey the impression made upon me by that glad, mysterious cry. Looking at Julian, I saw, by the glimmer of the candle within him, there was a strange, rapt expression on his face. Well, clearly he's got to ejaculate again. "What can it be? What can it be?" he muttered, as if half to himself. "I don't know," I replied, still struggling to speak calmly and to shake off the unholy spell upon me. "Some sort of night bird, I imagine." Bird, he repeated irritably. Such sounds as those never came from the throat of a fowl. This region is a kind of terra incognita, I responded. How do we know what strange creatures, bird, beast, or reptile, inhabit those unexplored woods and jungles? No, he said doggedly, neither bird, beast, nor reptile. If the soul of a woman lost by some great sin of passion possessed a voice after death. I laughed. The woman wailing for her demon lover, as Coleridge says. Well, my dear fellow, I'm afraid you have to accept the unromantic owl with his tenor note, or even the jovial jackal. Hush! Listen! A third time came that weird cry, if possible yet more sad, more sweet, more yearning, more utterly heart-enthralling in its nameless, tempting tenderness. In spite of myself, I sprang to my feet with the impulse to go somewhere, to do something. I knew not what. Julian glanced at me somberly. You feel it too, he said quietly. My better sense tells me you must be right, and that it is, in fact, some kind of bird or animal. But why should it affect us as it does? It seems to be calling me, beseeching me. He put his hand to his head and spoke in a slow, dreamy way. It is like a voice out of the past, bringing back my early boyhood, and faces and motions long since forgotten. He broke off and laughed harshly. I never suspected myself of a poetic talent. Yet here I am in the heart of an Indian jungle, going into lyrics over an owl, or what did you say, a jackal? He laughed again, and leaning back against the wall, crossed his hands over his knees and drew upon his pipe till his face glowed ruddily in the light from the bowl. For a considerable space neither of us spoke. I was in a most perplexing frame of mind. I was listening eagerly, hoping to hear the cry again, yet at the same time, in some irritating fashion, dreading to hear it. However, it was not repeated, and presently, with a curt good night, Julian arose, knocked the ashes out of his pipe, and went into our sleeping chamber. For half an hour longer I remained upon the veranda, smoking, and reasoned to myself out of the unnatural and absurd agitation which had fallen upon me. I had a good story to tell on Julian when we rejoined our mess. Pulling off my shoes, coat, and vest, with as little noise as possible, I lay down upon my mattress and drew the blanket over my shoulders. For a long time I lay staring, wide awake. Julian was asleep but very restless, groaning and turning from side to side as if disturbed by bad dreams. Finally I fell into a troubled slumber, starting awake again and again with that wild, melancholy cry ringing in my ears, to hear only the deep breathing of my comrade and the low swish of the palms beside the bungalow. The clatter of pots and pans, the smell of boiling coffee awoke me early on the following morning. Poor Julian called me to his bedside with a husky request for water, and saw instantly by his leaden-ringed eyes and purple features that he had a touch of jungle fever. There was no going on for that day, and after administering a stiff dose of quinine, I sat myself down with some old engineering reports we'd happened to have with us, and possessed my soul in patience. Toward evening, the fit passed over, and Julian was able to set up and drink a cup of the decoction which the connoissement called tea. After supper, leaving my companion dozing on his mattress to escape the stifling atmosphere of the bungalow, I took my stool upon the veranda and lit a pipe. It was one of the dull, oppressive evenings, hot as an oven, yet with an unwholesome chill, a paradox only to be experienced in India. A pale, yellowish fog hung over the trees, trailing wisps along the dank turf, shutting out the stars, penetrating the lungs with an acrid, suffocating sensation. The effect upon my spirits was intolerably depressing, and I was on the point of going inside again, when Julian appeared with stool and pipe. He looked sallow and weak, but declared himself better. During the day, by mutual consent as it seemed, we had both avoided reference to our experience the previous evening, yet neither of us had forgotten it. Our very avoidance of the subject proved that. And now as we sat smoking and talking, I knew that Julian, like myself, was nervously wondering if those mysterious sounds would be repeated. For my part, I was heartily ashamed of my own folly. To work oneself in such a state with the screech of a night bird. It was pitiable, it was preposterous. If a lunacy commission had hailed me before it at that moment, I doubt if I should have found the courage to make a defense. However, as 8 o'clock passed, then 9, and began to draw towards 10, without event, my common sense reassumed the ascendant. I had knocked out my pipe and was proposing that we should retire when Julian suddenly put his hand out and checked me. His quicker ear had caught a sound which had escaped mine. Ah, low, tremulous, trilling as the heartbroken sigh of a mourning woman, it rose, wavered, sank, and died away into the depths of the forest. Hand clutching hand, and eye gazing into eye with wild questioning, we stood and listened. Again it came, louder, clearer, more beseeching, more tempting, falling softly into silence with a long, delicious moan that shook the soul and sent the blood burning along the veins and beating in the temples. The unholy sweetness of that cadence, for even then I felt there was something wicked, diabolic, unnatural in it, I shall never forget. Julian trembled and panted. "Take me in," he grasped, gripping me convulsively. "Take me where I can't hear that, or I shall yield to it. I shall rush out there where it is and be lost." I did not fully comprehend the cause of his words, for I was too confused and excited myself. I was filled with a sense of peril. Peril to us both. From what, in what way, I did not stop to think. I hurried him into the bungalow, shut the door and windows, lighted a candle with shaking fingers, and then sat down before him. Our eyes met, and we burst into a fit of laughter, loud, long, and hysterical. "Well, for a prize pair of fools!" I ejaculated when I could speak. He became suddenly grave and looked at me haggardly. "What is it?" he said in a whisper. "Are we both mad?" "Fever," I responded. "Developed in you, incipient in me. That's what it is. Fever. Yeah, fever for ejaculating, apparently." God, I love old-time speech and languages. Language moves on. Goes further and further down into the gutter. He made no reply. Now that the excitement had worn off, he seemed very weak and scarcely able to stand. I helped him off with his shoes and outer clothing, and covered him up with his blanket. I sat beside him for a while in silence, until by his regular breathing I judged he was asleep. Then I too retired to my mattress. I was still so confounded and distraught that I was unable to think connectedly, and it was this, doubtless, that enabled me to get asleep in a very few moments. In another hour I started up, wide awake at the idea that someone had called me in a loud voice. I was oppressed with an ugly sensation of being alone. I listened for Julian's breathing, but everything was deadly silent in the room. For a moment I lay quiet, with an icy chill running over me. Then I arose and groped over to his mattress. I put out my hand and touched his pillow. His head was not there. He was not in bed. Terrified as I should not have been under ordinary circumstances, I blundered about in the dark till I found and lighted the candle. Then I saw that the blanket had been cast off the mattress, and that Julian's shoes, clothing, and cap were gone. Normally, I would not be averse to his lack of clothing. Hurrying in my own garments, I went upon the veranda. Julian was nowhere in sight. I called to him, at first in a low tone, then louder, till in my fright my voice rose to a shout that must have startled the inhabitants of the jungle half a mile around. It elicited no response from Julian, but brought the servants and the old consignman upon the veranda, rubbing their eyes and inquiring what was the matter. I was hurriedly explaining the cause of my alarm. When faintly and far off, miles away, it seemed once again arose that weird cry. The effect upon the old consignman was instantaneous. With a groan of abject fear, he seized me by the arm and attempted to drag me into the bungalow. "The Gene! The Gene!" he cried in alarm. "What is the Gene?" I asked, resisting his frantic efforts. "Answer me, can't you?" "The Unholy One, the destroyer of men, body and soul. Oh, Sahib, I beseech you. I implore you, come inside and shut your ears, or you are lost." "You old fool!" I shouted, shaking his withered frame to and fro in my alarm and impatience. "If you do not give me a rational answer, I will throttle you." As he went on staring, moaning, and babbling, I followed him into his kitchen, where there was a light, and pushing him into a seat, said sternly, "Now tell me in a few words what you mean. Be quick about it, for my friend is out there somewhere." "Then he is lost," replied the old man solemnly. "He's been tempted into the jungle by the Gene, and will never be seen again." "But what is the Gene?" I cried, stamping in rage. It is the hot new clothing item that's sweeping the nation." "The spirit of a woman," he said in a whisper, "a beautiful woman who has died in sin. They haunt old and solitary places, luring unwary travelers with their sweet voices to devour them. You may always know them by their feet, which are turned backward." I had heard something of the kind before, but no one in India pays attention to the 1,001 hobgoblin stories of the natives. I was simply irritated at having wasted time in listening to the old fool's twaddle. There was nothing in the shape of a lantern about the place, and I was compelled to do the best I could with a candle. Putting my revolver in my pocket, I ordered the servants to accompany me. This they flatly refused to do, and giving them a hearty kick apiece, I went out on my search for Julian alone. Because, again, British. It's honestly low-ball behavior towards people from India. I had not gone a dozen steps when my candle was extinguished by the wind. I thrust it aside and stumbled on, shouting and fixing my revolver as I went, and pausing every few yards to listen. There was no reply and no sign to guide me in my hunt. Finally, after shouting myself hoarse, firing off all my cartridges, and bruising myself with several heavy falls, I gave up in despair and returned to the bungalow. I shall never forget the 4 long, anxious hours I spent trying to extract something sensible from the moaning, whimpering natives, starting at every sound, hoping it might be the footstep of my returning friend. But he came not. With the first gleam of dawn, I darted out to renew my search. The old councilman now declared himself willing to accompany me. "Genes," he said confidently, "work their evil spells only in darkness." A short distance from the bungalow, we came upon the print of an English shoe, which I knew to be Julian's in the wet soil. The track led us directly into the jungle for a quarter of a mile, until we came to an old disused well beneath a grove of bhopal trees. The councilman, who was little in advance, suddenly stopped short and uttered a terrified exclamation. He was gazing with starting eyes at something on the ground before him. I hurried to his side and saw that he was pointing out the print of a small naked foot, evidently a woman's, clearly outlined in the mud. Near it were the impressions of both Julian's shoes, close together as if he had come to a halt. Following up the tracks, I saw they led at right angles, deeper into the forest, the small naked feet beside the shoes. "Why, he must have met some woman here!" I exclaimed, looking at the old man in amazement. "Who could she have been?" "The Jean," he replied quaveringly. "Oh, poor young Sahib! We shall never see him again." "Nonsense!" I replied angrily, though despite my better sense the councilman's solemn manner sent a chill to my heart. "He's come across some pretty native girl." "Do living girls walk backward?" asked the old man with still deeper solemnity. I had not examined the female tracks closely hitherto, but now I had stooped down and studied them. Certainly there was something strange about these footprints. The toes seemed to have impressed themselves most deeply, the heels dragged after in an unaccountable fashion. Moreover, the heels pointed away from each other at a wide angle, while the great toes nearly touched. No, certainly, I had never seen any woman walk as this woman must have walked. "What in heaven's name does it mean?" I asked, still staring at the mysterious footprints. "The footprints of a Jean," replied the old man doggedly. "The unholy one whose voice you heard last night. The evil spirit in the guise of a beautiful woman whose feet are turned backwards. Sahib, we may as well return. Your friend is lost." And the old councilman mournfully shook his grizzled locks. I paid no heed to him. With my head in a whirl, I continued to follow the tracks through the jungle until we came to an open space. In the center of which was a deep, black-looking pool, perhaps 10 yards in diameter. The footprints led straight toward this pool. Also, "Hello, newcomer? Glad to have you on the stream." Arriving at the brink, I paused aghast, for here was visible evidences of a desperate struggle. The ground was trodden, and the rank vegetation crushed and ground to a pulp. In the midst of this trodden space, a white button caught my attention. It was a linen cuff torn out at the buttonholes and spotted with blood. It was Julian's. I knew the cuff button, which was still in place. While horror-stricken, I was examining the cuff. The old man brought me Julian's cloth traveling cap, which he had found among the reeds by the pool. Upon the crown was a dark splash which was not water. Besides the cuff and the cap, an hour's search revealed no other traces of my missing friend. No footprints led away from the pool. There was no further sign of his mysterious companion, or nor of any other living creature. In a state of mind which I cannot even now recall without a shudder, I returned to the bungalow, and getting together a body of natives from a neighboring village, scoured the country for miles around. I also had the pool dragged. After 3 days' unavailing search, I was reluctantly compelled to give up my attempt and continue my sorrowful journey toward Camas alone. If you ask me to offer a solution to my poor friend's mysterious disappearance, I could say that he may have wandered away in a paroxysm of fear and fallen into the pool, but remember that I had the pool carefully dragged. He may have been seized by some wild animal, though we found no trace of any such animal. Finally, he may have been lured away by a native woman acting as decoy for assassins. How then account for the fact that there was no tracks leading away from the pool? For myself, when I think of the old woman's footprints, the old councilman's tale of the Jeans whose feet are turned backwards, and most of all when I recalled that weird cry we heard, well, I do not know what to say. So, not a bad start. I'm a bit unsure whether or not that was like an actual animal story or, like an just rip ghost story. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna take a moment to rest my throat a little bit. Let's see. I have actually read a good deal of these, but with these ahead of time. So let's see. In the Albu Observatory in Apiornis Island, these are both by H.G. Wells. Fiend of the Cooperage is racism jump scare. Brazilian Cat is these two are both by Conan Doyle. The Killing of the Mammoth is exactly what it says it is. The Spell of the Bird, that one I don't remember. A Relic of the Pliocene, I'm pretty sure that's also a mammoth. The Monarch of Saint Elias, I think it's a bear story. The Great White Serpent of the Malorli is exactly what it says. Alfred Jenkins and the Dee. Now, I think it's random chimp event. The Gregosaur of Black Lake is 2 pages long, and it's not very good. Last of the Race, I do not remember much about it, or about the Death Trap. The Air Serpent is just a straight-up dragon. Terror, Blue John Gap, and Heart of the Heights are both Doyle. Pretty good ones. The Hummingbats and Devil's Fish I have not read. An Alaskan Monster, The Last Egg of the Great Auk, and The Shame of Gold, and An Undiscovered Isle in the Far Sea. These ones I have also not read. And yeah, no, my shoes are untied. They're slippers, they're fine. Oh, whoop. Shit. Did I? Okay, okay, let's see. Also, I do have a couple other books, if you guys want me to switch to those. I've got Boss Snakes. I got basically collections of other themed collections. I got, let's see, 3 about killer weird plants, 1 about sea monsters, 1 about dinosaurs, 2 with bugs, and 1 with monkeys. Okay, actually 1 with bugs. I don't have that on me. Okay, let's see, another thing I need to figure out how the hell I'm supposed to set up a pause screen. Whatever the term is. Yeah, Kazrak. I'm also not really sure about how legal most of this is, which is why I'm focusing on these stories. They're all public domain, which means nobody can It means theoretically, no one should be able to sue me. I'm pretty sure the Hungry Hunk Caterpillar is still around. I'm pretty sure that one's still very much copyrighted. The Brazilian cat, that one is just a straight up fucking jaguar. Okay, the death trap is just a public domain Dianoga, or whatever the hell the Star Wars thing is. The Air Serpent's about again, straight up dragon. Heart of the Heights is a classic one. Welcome back, Raph. What do you want me to write? Want me to do? No. It was just like the guy just fucking vanished into a pool. Yeah, for the roster of other stories in this collection, you got a giant Colugo and Apiornis, big snakes, jaguars, mammoths, some birds. Let's see, some birds, some bears. Also, whatever the fuck a Gregosaur is. Let's see, the caviest bear. Yeah, hummingbats and the devil's fish. I don't know what. Past Horror of the Heights, I've not seen. I've not read any of those beyond that. Like, should y'all think we should go to one of those? We should go to one of those, or All right, do the Colugo. And it's also done by none other than H.G. motherfucking Wells. God, I really should have gotten some water for this. The observatory at Avu in Borneo stands at the spur of the mountain. To the north rises the old crater, black against the unfathomable blue of the sky. From the little circular building with its mushroom dome, the slopes plunge steeply downward into the black mysteries of the tropical forest beneath. This little house in which the observer and his assistant live is about 50 yards from the observatory, and beyond this the huts of their native attendants. Thaddy, the chief observer, was down with a slight fever. His assistant Woodhouse paused for a moment in silent contemplation of the tropical night before commencing his solitary vigil. The night was very silent. Now and then voices and laughter came from the native huts, or the cry of some strange animal was heard from the midst of the mystery of the forest. Nocturnal insects appeared in ghostly fashion out of the darkness and fluttered round his light. He thought that perhaps of all the possibilities of discovery that still lay in the black tangle beneath him. For to the naturalist, the virgin forests of Borneo are still a wonderland, full of strange questions and half-suspected discoveries. Woodhouse carried a small lantern in his hand, and its yellow glow contrasted vividly with the infinite series of tints between lavender, blue, and black in which the landscape was painted. His hands and face were smeared with ointment against the attacks of the mosquitoes. Even in these days of celestial photography, work done in a purely temporary erection, with only the most primitive appliances in addition to the landscape, still involves a very large amount of cramped and motionless watching. He sighed as he thought of the physical fatigues before him, stretched himself, and entered the observatory. Actually, let me just change my position a little bit. The reader is probably familiar with the structure of an ordinary astronomical observatory. The building is usually cylindrical in shape, with a very light hemispherical roof capable of being turned around from the interior. A telescope is supported upon a stone pillar in the center, and a clockwork arrangement compensates the Earth's rotation, and allows a star once found to be continuously observed. Beside this, there is a compact tracery of wheels and screws about its point of support, by which the astronomer adjusts it. There was, of course, a slit in the movable roof which followed the eye of the telescope in its survey of the heavens. The observer sits or lies in a sloping wooden arrangement, which he can wheel to any part of the observatory as the position of the telescope may require. Within it is advisable to have things as dark as possible in order to enhance the brilliance of the stars observed. The lantern flared as Woodhouse entered his circular den, and the general darkness fled into black shadows behind the big machine, which presently seemed to creep back over the whole place again as the light waned. The slit was a profound transparent blue, in which 6 stars shone with tropical brilliance, and their light lay a pallid gleam along the black tube of the instrument. Woodhouse shifted the roof, and proceeding to the telescope, turned first one wheel and then another, the great cylinder slowly swinging to a new position. Then he glanced through the finder at the little companion telescope, moved the roof a little more, made some further adjustments, and set the clockwork in motion. He took off his jacket, for the night was very hot, and pushed into position the uncomfortable seat to which he was condemned for the next 4 hours. Then with a sigh he resigned himself to his watch upon the mysteries of space. There was no sound now in the observatory, and the lantern waned steadily. Outside there was the occasional cry of some animal in alarm or pain, or calling to its mate, and intermittent sounds of the Malay and Dyak servants. Presently one of the men began a queer chanting song, in which the others joined at intervals. After this it would seem they turned in for the night, for no further sound came from their direction, and the whispering stillness became more and more profound. The clockwork ticked steadily. The shrill hum of a mosquito explored the place and grew shriller in indignation at Woodhouse's ointment. Then the lantern went out and all the observatory was black. Woodhouse shifted his position presently when the slow movement of the telescope had carried it beyond the limits of his comfort. He was watching a little group of stars in the Milky Way, in one of which his chief had seen or fancied a remarkable color variability. It was not a part of the regular work for which the establishment existed, and for that reason, perhaps, Woodhouse was deeply interested. He must have forgotten things terrestrial. All his attention was concentrated upon the great blue circle of the telescope field. A circle powdered, so it seemed, with an innumerable multitude of stars, and all luminous against the blackness of its setting. As he watched, he seemed to himself to become incorporeal, as if he too were floating in the ether of space. Infinitely remote was the faint red spot he was observing. Suddenly the stars were blotted out. A flash of blackness passed, and they were visible again. "Queer," said Woodhouse. "Must have been a bird." The thing happened again. Immediately after, the great tube shivered as though it had been struck. Then the dome of the observatory resounded with a series of thundering blows. The stars seemed to sweep aside as the telescope swung round and away from the slit in the roof. "Great Scott!" cried Woodhouse. "What's this?" Some huge, vague black shape flapping something like a wing seemed to be struggling in the aperture of the roof. In another moment, the slit was clear again, and the luminous haze of the Milky Way shone warm and bright. The interior of the roof was perfectly black, and only a scraping sound marked the whereabouts of this unknown creature. Woodhouse scrambled from the seat to his feet. He was trembling violently, and in perspiration with the suddenness of the occurrence. Was the thing, whatever it was, inside or out? It was big, whatever else it might be. Something shot across the skylight, and the telescope swayed. He started violently and put his arm up. He was in the observatory, then, with him! He was clinging to the roof, apparently. What the devil was it? Could it see him? He stood for perhaps a minute in a state of stupefaction. The beast, whatever it was, clawed the interior of the dome, and then something flapped almost into his face, and saw the momentary gleam of starlight on its skin like oiled leather. His water bottle was knocked off of his little table with a smash. The sense of some strange bird creature hovering a few yards from his face was indescribably unpleasant to Woodhouse, as it would be for most people, I imagine. As his thought returned, he concluded it must be some night bird or large bat. At any risk he would see what it was, and pulling a match from his pocket, he tried to strike it on the telescope seat. There was a smoking streak of phosphorescent light. The match flared for a moment, and he saw a vast wing. Wing sweeping toward him, a gleam of gray-brown fur, and then he was struck in the face, and the match knocked out of his hand. The blow was aimed at his temple, and a claw tore sideways down to his cheek. He reeled and fell, and heard the extinguished lantern smash. Another blow followed as he fell. He was partly stunned. He felt his own warm blood stream out upon his face. Instinctively, he felt... I didn't? I think might have been that. He was struck again upon the back, and he heard his jacket rip, and then the thing hit the roof. Wait, no, hang on. And thankfully, he felt his eyes had been struck at, and turning over on his face to protect them, he tried to crawl under the protection of the telescope. He was struck again upon the back, and he heard his jacket rip, and then the thing hit the roof of the observatory. He edged as far as he could between the wooden seat and the eyepiece of the instrument, and turned his body around so that chiefly his feet were exposed. With these he could at least kick. He was still in a mystified state. The strange beast banged about in the darkness, and presently clung to the telescope, making it sway and the gear rattle. Once it flapped near him and kicked out madly and felt a soft body with his feet. He was horribly scared now. It must be a big thing to swing the telescope up like that. He saw for a moment the outline of a head black against the starlight, with sharply pointed upstanding ears and a crest between them. It seemed to him to be as big as a mastiff's. Then he began to bawl out as loudly as he could for help. Speaking of which, Raph, calm down. And that the thing, it came down upon him again. As he did so, his hand touched something beside him on the floor. He kicked out, and the next moment his ankle was gripped and held by a row of keen teeth. He yelled again and tried to free his leg by kicking with the other. Then realized he had the broken water bottle at his hand, and snatching it, he struggled into a sitting posture, and feeling the darkness toward his foot, gripped a velvety ear like the ear of a big cat. He had seized the water bottle by its neck and brought it down with a shivering crash upon the head of the strange beast. He repeated the blow, and then stabbed and jabbed with the jagged edge of it in the darkness where he judged the face might be. The small teeth relaxed their hold, and at once Woodhouse pulled his leg free and kicked hard. He felt the sickening feel of fur and bone giving under his foot. There was a tearing bite in his arm, and he struck it over the face, as he judged, and hit damp fur. There was a pause, then he heard the sound of claws and the dragging of a heavy body away from him over the observatory floor. Then there was silence, broken only by his own sobbing breathing and a sound like licking. Everything was black except the parallelogram of the blue skylight with a luminous dust of stars, against which the end of the telescope now appeared in silhouette. He waited, as it seemed, for an interminable time. Was the thing coming on again? He felt in his trouser pocket for some matches, and found one remaining. He tried to strike this, but the floor was wet, and spat and went out. He cursed. He could not see where the door was situated. In a struggle he had quite lost his bearings. The strange beast, disturbed by the splutter of the match, began to move again. "Time!" called Woodhouse. Woodhouse, with a sudden gleam of mirth, but the thing was not coming at him again. He must have heard it, he thought, with the broken bottle. He felt a dull pain in his ankle. Probably he was bleeding there. He wondered if it would support him if he tried to stand up. The night outside was very still. There was no sound of anyone moving. The sleepy fools had not heard those wings battering upon the dome, nor his shouts. It was no good wasting strength in shouting. The monster flapped its wings and startled him into a defensive attitude. He hit his elbow against the seat and fell over with a crash. He cursed this, and he cursed the darkness. Suddenly, the oblong patch of starlight seemed to sway to and fro. Was he going to faint? It would never do to faint. He clenched his fist and set his teeth to hold himself together. Where had the door got to? It occurred to him that he could get his bearings by the stars visible through the skylight. The patch of stars he saw was in Sagittarius and southeastward. The door was north. Or was it north by west? He tried to think. If he could get the door open, he might retreat. It might be the thing was wounded. Suspense was beastly. "Look here," he said. "If you don't come on, I shall come at you." Then the thing began clambering up the side of the observatory, saw its black outline gradually blot out the skylight. Was it in retreat? He forgot about the door and watched as the dome shifted and creaked. Somehow he did not feel very frightened or excited now. He felt a curious sinking sensation inside him. The sharply defined patch of light, with a black form moving across it, seemed to be growing smaller and smaller. That was curious. He began to feel very thirsty. He did not feel inclined to get anything to drink. He seemed to be sliding down a long funnel. He felt a burning sensation in his throat, and then he perceived it was broad daylight, and that one of the Diak servants was looking at him with a curious expression. Then there was the top of Thaddeus' face upside down. Funny fellow, Thaddeus, to go about like that. Then he grasped the situation better and perceived that his head was on Thaddeus' knee, and Thaddeus was giving him brandy. And then he saw the eyepiece of the telescope with a lot of red smears on it. He began to remember. "You made this observatory in a pretty mess," said Thaddeus. The Diak boy was beating up an egg and brandy. Woodhouse took this and sat up. He felt a sharp twinge of pain. His ankle was tied up, so were his arm and the side of his face. The smashed glass, red-stained, lay about the floor. The telescope seat was overturned, and by the opposite wall was a dark pool. The door was open, and by it you saw the gray summit of the mountain against the brilliant background of blue sky. "Pah," said Woodhouse. "Who's been killing calves here? Take me out of it." And then he remembered the thing and the fight he had had with it. "What was it?" he said to Thaddy. "The thing that I fought with." "You know that best," said Thaddy. "But anyhow, don't worry yourself now about it. Have some more to drink." Thaddy, however, was curious enough, and it was a hard struggle between duty and inclination to keep Woodhouse quiet until he was decently put away in bed, and had slept upon the copious dose of meat extract Thaddy had considered advisable. They then talked it over together. "Meat extract sounds like the most unappealing way to describe soup I have ever heard." "Oh yeah, I'm feeling a bit sick then. I'm gonna have a nice piping hot bowl of meat extract." "It was," said Woodhouse, "more like a big bat than anything else in the world. It has sharp, short ears and soft fur, and its wings were leathery. Its teeth were little, but devilish sharp, and its jaw could not have been very strong, or else it would have bitten through my ankle." "It is pretty nearly," said Thaddy. "It seemed to me to head out with its claws pretty freely. That is about as much as I know about the beast. Our conversation was intimate, so to speak, and yet not confidential. The Diak chaps talk about a big Kalugo, a Clang-o-Tang, whatever that may be. It does not often attack man, but I suppose you made it nervous. They say there is a big Kalugo and little Kalugo, and something else that sounds like gobble. They all fly about at night. For my own part, I know there are flying foxes and flying lemurs about here, but they are none of them very big beasts." "There are more things in heaven and earth," said Woodhouse, and Thaddy groaned at the quotation, "and more particularly in the forests of Borneo, that are dreamt of in our philosophies. On the whole, the Borneo fauna is going to discourage any more of its novelties upon me. I should prefer that it did so when I was not occupied in the observatory at night and alone." All right, and that was at the observatory. Let's see, now we have been going for. Let me just check. Yeah, about a solid hour now. I think that now it's a good time to stop. I got some good data out of this. Namely, that it has been out for an hour exactly. Okay, I think I should probably come to a stop for tonight. Mostly because I was not really prepared for this. Just need, like I said, this is just kind of a session 0. Thank you guys for coming to, and thank you for indulging me. I know this isn't exactly something I don't know. Something I wanted to try, at least. Take care.